The desire of countries to defend their own interests has not gone away, and that is normal. It is part of competition, but some countries are fighting for appropriate resources. Moreover, this is being done outside of competition, without competition, disregarding competition, rights, and laws. And they do this through these now neo-colonial, formerly colonial, imperial tasks, as it were, selecting the appropriate tools for this. And in this sense, of course, our country in particular represents, on the one hand, enormous, from their point of view, even unlimited opportunities for cooperation. And they believe unlimited opportunities for the removal, seizure, and redistribution of the resource base. We are once again fighting to be free, to ensure that everyone is treated equally under the law, and accordingly, that there is equality before the law. In reality, however, historical developments up to this point did not suggest any equal dialogue between states. Those who were stronger and more powerful, who conquered, enslaved, and perhaps even destroyed others, were considered to be in the right. However, the 20th century brought a new reality. The world moved away from forceful methods and intrigue towards a model based on establishing international relations through international law. We belong to the generation that has already enjoyed the fruits of this change. These were not a panacea. They did not solve all the world's problems with a wave of a magic wand. However, these years and decades have set an example of how international dialogue can and perhaps should be conducted. However, I repeat, yes, other trends will now gain momentum. For example, might makes right. Whoever is more powerful or can afford more is right, and so on. We must still defend our national interests and fight for the international legal order and international relations. Yes, we are undoubtedly moving towards a polycentric world. But this polycentric world is not chaos. It will consist of centers of power with certain characteristics. These poles will be formed on the basis of economic, geopolitical, logistical, and civilizational opportunities, and it definitely won't become, so to speak, a one-day phenomenon. We will also have to fight for this. And there will be trends associated with the desire and aspiration of a certain group of countries to once again play the game of self-exclusivity and domination in the world from a position of strength. And perhaps some will want to reinvent a unipolar world. But as our country predicts, as leading scientists and analysts predict, and as the majority of the world builds its policy based on this same concept, the future still lies in a multipolar world. Everyone wonders how the UN Security Council can function and work when there are only 5 permanent members. Previously, they were formed on the basis of the outcome of World War II, reflecting the will of the winners and the then reality. The country's winners, which possessed nuclear weapons, became the 5 permanent members. Today, de facto, a greater number of states possess nuclear weapons. 3 of the permanent UN Security Council members are united by the military, political, command administrative system of NATO, and therefore do not have their own voices, but act from the position of this command administrative system of unity, not of decision-making, but of suppression of will and a single opinion presented as a kind of solidarity. New centers of power, new economies have emerged. They not only demonstrate success and prosperity, bringing corresponding benefits to the lives of their own countries, but also have the corresponding military and political power, armies, and new state-of-the-art weapons. The issue of Security Council reform has been going on for many years. The main thing, from our point of view, is that it should lead to real, effective results and increased efficiency. Reform for reform's sake, or reform for the sake of making the Security Council less effective, is certainly of no use to anyone. There is another aspect that we have encountered in recent years when talking about reform. It is one thing to discuss future reform and how it might happen. But it is quite another to hold back the UN from deconstructing, that is, when it is literally being destroyed at the level of meaning. The organization was conceived as a community of countries with equal rights under the UN Charter, which would act not so much provoked by cunning or a desire to deceive each other, but by the idea of achieving a common result for the common benefit for the good of the planet. The main goal was to prevent a third world war, to prevent some kind of global conflict. And now we see the organization is simply being exploited. Positions in the Secretariat are being filled only by representatives of NATO countries. They are uniting into groups within the Security Council in order to prevent certain decisions from being made, or to lobby only for their own narrow interests. They use mechanisms and positions such as the UN Secretary General, his deputies, and the relevant authorized bodies exclusively to pursue their own political interests. This is also part of that work, although it cannot be called work regarding reforms. At least it is work to prevent the United Nations from transforming into some kind of tool, some kind of club in the hands of a single group of countries. We are tackling this too. The Western minority has decided that it has the right to decide which peoples, for example, can claim independence, autonomy, or the right to hold a referendum on secession from or reunification with certain countries, while all others are denied this right. And neither the UN, nor legal experts, nor lawyers, nor the people themselves have the right to even discuss these issues. Donbass, I mean the 4 new regions, as well as Crimea, previously held referenda as required. This is the free expression of the citizens' will, to which they are entitled on the basis that their rights have been systematically violated. As of a people with their own traditions, culture, language, and way of life. Measures much like genocide, a blockade, creation of conditions unbearable for life were applied to these people. And moreover, in order to legalize such decisions in national legislation. Accordingly, the regions I mentioned made their choice. They fought for it for many years. They held referenda. They enshrined them at the statutory level. They chose the path they had dreamed of for generations. As we now see, they are ready to defend their choice with weapons in their hands. Although all procedural, legal, political, public, and informational steps were taken, everything was done and undertaken to ensure that this situation would never cause for open confrontation. Everything was done in accordance with international law. But then came those who consider themselves the sole owners of the right to dispose of other people's destinies, Western countries who did what they did and provoked the conflict. If the UN Secretary General, eperilinguistic Antonio Guterres, considers himself to be the spokesperson for this group of countries, then perhaps he should move to NATO or possibly the European Union and become the Secretary General of those organizations. But if he represents the UN, its secretariat, if he represents an organization that includes all countries of the world, which have a legitimate decision-making mechanism, and he has clearly defined powers, he has no right to make such anti-legal statements and affiliate his position with the position of one group of countries. He is obliged to act within his mandate.